There is indeed a global fertilizer shortage. 50% of global fertilizer exports have been halved. Partially, that is a major ban on exports by bear country, by dragon country, and then Belarus as well. In addition to that, going actually over that 50%, yeah, it's actually worse than I put it on the thumbnail. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? The European Union has now shut down 70% of its fertilizer plants. The EU generally will produce about 16.6% of the world's exports of fertilizer. 70% of that has now been shut down due to high natural gas prices. We just heard word that 2 more fertilizer plants in Poland are shutting down due to the record high natural gas prices. The Grupa Azoty, forgive the pronunciation, EU's second largest fertilizer plant, has just decided to close doors. This is after just a month and a half ago where CF Industries in the UK shut down their production in the United Kingdom in June. So 70% of the EU's fertilizer plants are offline. A bunch have been idled in the United States, particularly both in the United States and over in Australia. Fertilizer production has been shifted to make AdBlue or DEF, depending on how you want to say it. So the additive that goes into trucks, trains, other diesel engines to comply to laws about emissions. So actually DEF is not required to make a diesel engine function, but it is required in order to make the engine function legally in most Western countries. So the sensors in there, unless you uninstall them or hack your system, which I cannot in any way advocate. And I've heard people varying reports of, oh, it's super easy to tear out, to you really need an expert technician to do that properly. But I'll let you guys argue about that in the comments down below. But we were talking about the DEF shortage, but one caveat I put on there was that DEF is very similar to urea that is used for fertilizer, and so those fertilizer plants could actually be repurposed over to making DEF and AdBlue, which is exactly what they've done. So that's why we haven't had a crisis DEF shortage in Australia, where it was really looking intense. They shifted several of their large fertilizer plants over to making AdBlue, as it's called there. And so that's why we haven't had a DEF crisis, but that's why over 50% of the world's exports of fertilizer are gone. So, modern-day fertilizer has been the answer to why we've been able to hike yields up through the roof. Now, there's GMOs out there, and those have definitely increased yields, whether you like that or not. The simple fact is that using GMOs produces more of whatever we're talking about here, whether you think it's arsenic or whether you think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. The simple fact is GMOs have produced more crops, but they demand a lot of fertilizer. And fertilizer, combined with modern irrigation technology and computerization of a lot of things, is what has allowed farmers to really increase their yields dramatically. But 50% of the world exports of fertilizer are now gone. Now, I say 50% because it depends on how you calculate it up. So about 50% by dollar value, but well over 50% if you count tonnage. You know, it depends. As an accountant, I have to cover my bases here. Because someone's going to be like, it's not that number because I just looked it up on Google and by tonnage, it's this. Well, obviously tonnage is going to be different than dollar value because stuff exported by Dragon Country tends to be cheaper than stuff exported out of like Belgium, right? Even though it may be the exact same thing, it can tend to be a different price. So by dollar amounts, it's just around 50%. By tonnage, it's well over 50%, closing in on 60% of fertilizers out there gone. How are we going to grow our food? That's the question. That's the question that we have before us. And while we're seeing fertilizer stockpiles plummeting, we're not seeing farmers buying it up right now because they're hoping that the prices will go down, when in fact, prices are probably just going to go up. And simply put, a lot of farmers can't afford fertilizer at these prices. So there's that too. We went into this year, a lot of farmers in the West already had locked in contracts for fertilizer. They already had fertilizer in their silos or down at the stores that they buy from. They had already got that fertilizer locked in, and so they went into the season with fertilizer. Not all farmers, for sure. A bunch of farmers got caught flat-footed because they were used to buying it more as needed. That has gone not so good this year. But the thing is, next year, we're looking at a catastrophic devastation. So it's like we're already talking about worldwide harvests are looking really bad this year because of weather particularly, but some of that may be attributed to fertilizer shortages and also other like herbicides and insecticide. Some of those have not been available, and farmers have had to go without spraying their crops this year. I know everyone's going to be like so much more healthy this year because of that, but the simple fact is there's going to be less food. And if we're looking at like, well, we just need to get till next year. Next year we'll have a bumper crop. All the farmers will pull us out of the ditch and we'll be fine. Well, they won't be able to because they won't have fertilizer next year. You see how this is a problem, how this is a crisis that's unfolding, and the trucking DEF shortage has now flowed over, and the natural gas shortage has flowed over and is impacting farming directly. We just have one blow after the next hitting us, and we see that we're part of this giant global supply chain, and when you have Dragon Country and Bear Country say, we're not going to export fertilizer to the rest of the world, that's a problem when they produce about 50% of the world's phosphates, over 40% of the world's urea. Yeah, about 50% overall of all fertilizers come from Bear Country, Bear Country, Dragon Country, and Belarus, right? And that's a lot. You know where a lot of the other fertilizer comes from? And you're not going to want to hear this, because you'd be like, deja vu, are we going to invade or something like that? The Middle East. Yes, the Middle East produces a lot of the fertilizer because they get the natural gas out of the ground, they process it right there into fertilizer, and then they export it. So like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, some of these other Gulf states are like major exporters of fertilizer. So the categories that can be converted directly from natural gas or using petroleum products to do that, they are exporting a lot of fertilizers, and that's not exactly the most stable region in the world. We've had to invade them how many times now because of oil? Am I being too cynical again? Sorry. For freedom. We did it for freedom. That's right. Not for the oil. Well, if we start invading them again because of the fertilizer, well, you know what's going on with that, okay? But we have a serious problem, folks. For those of you who are not stocking up right now, you have several options here. You either become very self-sufficient by growing all of your own food or much of your own food, or being able to get there, which is a tremendous undertaking. That is basically almost a full-time job for a lot of folks. Now, you get some folks out there, just miracle workers, and they can put 20-some hours a week or a little, somewhere around there, and somehow be able to grow all of their own food. But pretty much anyone who's out there with major gardening and animals and stuff like that will tell you it is a lot of work. It's not something you just kind of stick your toe in and be like, well, I can kind of do this and do everything else. And it's like, well, no, not really. really, it's a big deal. Growing your own calories is a big deal. So you either need to be thinking that, or you need, and that's why we keep hammering this home. Right now, you can go down to the Walmart, you can buy the rice, you can buy the pinto beans, you can buy the buckets, the Mylar bags, put them together, and you can put together years worth of food for not that much money. Not that much money. You can get Wally World will deliver pinto beans and rice to your doorstep. I keep making them do that, and my delivery guy hates me for it. But they'll deliver the 20-pound bags of rice to your door for no cost, the 8-pound bags of pinto beans, and then you can figure out what to do with them once they get to your house, right? Folks, take serious steps because we are looking at a massive global crisis. Food yields are going to drop dramatically. This year, they may look like they underperform pretty significantly, but next year, it's going to be downright apocalyptic. SHTF on steroids. All right, folks, if you like this video, you might want to check out this video right here. Otherwise, I will see you later. Steve Poplar, out.